discussing yesterday. I'm going to get into some more practical examples. Um, so this was back in the 80s. His name's Kent Covey. But you see how like this kind of makes you what they call again using the fleissons, as we say in Delco. It's like you look at his arm and you're like, how is that possible? And this is baseball players professionally. That's their gift of performance. They have abnormal external rotation of their shoulder, hyper external rotation of their shoulder, like a catapult. Like if you were going to sling something on a catapult, you'd want to bring the catapult as far back as you can. And so that's what's happening here. We see Shaquille O'Neal, 7'1", and say, wow, he must be able to dunk. We see Simone Biles, who's 4'3" and built like a powerhouse. She must be able to flip. We can't see this hyper catapult external rotation because it happens so fast, our eyes can't see it. And so with slow motion video and high resolution photography, we can see that shoulder externally rotating because it happens so fast. And to piggyback on our lecture previously, when you're bringing your catapult back, you have to slow down the external rotation and immediately speed up the internal rotation. So you're going to be using internal rotators eccentrically to slow down the catapult and then concentrically to speed up the catapult with a plyometric sequence. It produces a huge strain on those muscles. And then what speeds up must slow down. And to make a ball move 90 to 100 miles an hour in the pros, you have to make your hand move 90 or 100 miles an hour. So that fast-moving arm has to slow down. So it's going to take eccentrics from those external rotators to slow it down. So that is a really cool picture from back in the day. In addition, his shoulder external rotation is kind of even more extreme than it looks, because his trunk is kind of leaning forward. So imagine if you were sitting upright. Let's do that right now. Take your dominant arm and try to bring your catapult back as far as you can. Your instinct, so as you externally rotate, your instinct is hand go back. So what you're going to do is you're going to say hand go back, and you're going to start to lean back to try to get a little bit of extra. He's leaning forward. So his catapult is literally parallel with the ground while he's leaning forward. In science, we call that insane. Like, that's crazy. But that's what gives them the gift to be able to sling a ball the way they do. So in other words, Shaq can't show me how to dunk, and then I go and say, oh, that looks easy, and then just go and dunk. Shaq is 7'1", maybe the greatest athlete of all time in terms of height and athleticism. But my point is that technique alone doesn't give me that extra 3 feet, okay? It's very similar. When we're working with people, and especially like in throwing things, we can't just say, well, if you use good technique, you could throw 90 miles an hour. That was a mistake people were telling me when I was a kid, when I wanted to play baseball. They were like, well, anybody could throw 90, it's just all in the technique. You have to be able to bring your catapult back. Does that make sense? And not everybody has that ability. Some people have different genetic gifts. In this case, it's that. But that explains why pitchers can be tall, short. You know, if it's about your catapult, it doesn't matter if, you know, it could be small person, big person. All right, guys, let's do a plyometric sequence, and we're going to use keywords here. So this is me last winter. All right, so we're going to chop this up. See what I did there? We're going to chop this up into phases, okay? So the phases we're going to do is when he brings the axe up, we're going to keep it sagittal. And the phases we're going to look at is, and I know he has to speed up the flexion. So let's start with that. I'm going to add a phase in here. Speed up the shoulder flexion. slow down the shoulder flexion. Like this is all physics, equations, but we don't have to solve for X. We could just use common sense. He's going to speed up the flexion. What speeds up must slow down. He's got to slow down the flexion in order to speed up the extension. Does that make sense? I mean, it should be common sense, right? Speed up the flexion. Guys, y'all come sit in your normal spots. This is weirding me out. Was there, y'all are usually never late. Was there like an accident or something? There was a gaggle in your boat? That is a legitimate excuse. I think I'm going to add that on the syllabus. Illness at geckos. Is the gecko okay?
The gecko is out of our car. It's fine.
Save the geckos. Speeding up the flexion. Now listen, I know there's going to be some combination. Who cares? We analyze joint by joint. And if you want to go in more in depth, analyze plane by plane if there's combination. So let's keep it sagittal. Speeding up the flexion. Who did it? How? Slow down the flexion. Who did it? How? Speed up the extension. Who did it? How? And I think we can agree that we didn't need muscles to slow down the extension because literally the collisions. Now, if he would have been like, oh, last second, I don't want to chop it. But he didn't need muscles to slow down the extension because literally the impact slowed down the extension. Does that make sense? Where are my baseball, softball players at? You ever notice when you were taking batting practice or hitting, it actually hurt more when you missed? Because when you make impact, the collision actually helps slow you down. The collision helps to negatively accelerate you. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. So phases. Speeding up the flexion, it's bringing it up. What agonistic group did it? How did they do it? So muscle contractions. What speeds up must slow down. So before he speeds up the extension, he's got to slow down the flexion. So slowing down the flexion, who did it? How? Speeding up the extension, who did it? How? You ready? Go. I'll keep playing it. I'll see if I can get a better. Bless you, man. That's what I don't like about this lighting. Oh, just look directly into the sun. Speeding up flexion, slowing down flexion, speeding up extension. So all I did was add one more. Let's see. Do you guys have a gecko in your cartoon?
No, I just see the time.
Oh, love honest. My anxiety won't let me do that. I wish it did, actually.
Usually mine kind of keeps me from it, but today.
Good for you. Good for you. And you still showed up. That's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, my anxiety is like, it's 2 hours before your doctor's appointment. Are you sure you can make it on time?
Yeah, you can't do anything still.
Yeah, that's me. I think I got traumatized when I was in athletic training because, like, we had to be at when I was at Southern Mississippi, I was at a softball. Our undergraduate students were playing in a softball tournament, so I had to support them. I'm literally standing by the bench talking to somebody, and one of our students swung the bat to warm up, and the bat flew out and cranked me right, and still have scars from the stitches. I think like 15 stitches. Concussed out of my mind. Still had to go to work the next day. The head guy was like, sorry, somebody got to be out there.
That's insane.
That was a long time ago.
Fair.
So I've always had an anxiety of if you're sick, you're not sick.
Yes.
Not a healthy way to live life, but
No.
All right, guys, I want to get to a few practical examples. So, speeding up the shoulder flexion, agonist, who did it? Which pullers? Shoulder flexors, yeah. And we'll learn who those muscles are. But the shoulder flexion pullers, nothing's trying to flex you, right? You got to make it happen through concentrics. What speeds up must slow down. It's kind of hard to see. That's why today I want to use some practical videos. It almost seems like his transition is instant because it's happening in a small amount of time. But everything takes time to speed up and slow down. So before he speeds up the extension, you have to slow down the flexion. Who did it and how? Slowing down the shoulder flexion. What group of muscles did I need to turn on above their resting tone? Extensors, absolutely. Those extensors are going to help to slow down the flexion through eccentrics.
Sorry.
No, please.
Would it be concentric since it's back here and gravity's bringing it back?
Because, well, that's a great question. But you're trying to change the direction of the motion.
Because the motion's going that way.
Yeah, absolutely. You gotta change the momentum. You gotta slow, and that's actually why those extensors that are slowing down your flexion, they get the added benefit of turning on to put on the brake and staying on to make you put on the gas. It's that weird thing where you don't have to switch pedals. You can keep it on one pedal to do both things through different contractions. So like in class, I think I used if you could somehow put it in reverse while you're going forward, the reverse button will slow down your motion coming forward, change your direction, and make you go back. So it'd be similar. In fact, it would need to work more. It would need to work more because gravity now is trying to flex you back here. Yeah, so it would even need to work more to slow down that momentum and then turn around. Good question, guys. I know it's tough, but I always encourage questions and feedback. That's how I learn too. Slowing down the flexion. Tensors eccentric. Those muscles will continue to stay on, change your direction, and then speed up the extension. Extensors concentric. Hey, there was something special about that where you have an agonist eccentrically slowing down, immediately followed by concentrically speeding up. It's our plyometric sequence of our extensors, slowing down the flexion and then speeding up the extension. Cool. Now, there's a practical reason. You may say, well, wait, wouldn't gravity be trying to extend the shoulders right there? Absolutely. But if all he did was let gravity do the work, right, the block wouldn't get chopped. And if his shoulder flexors allowed the extension, it would go even slower than that. So does it make it should make logical sense why he would need to use muscles that are yanking down in the same direction of gravity, because there's a practical reason to do so. Make sense? Any questions? Any follow-up questions? Yes, sir.
So you said this, like the same puller slowing down and then speeding up, that's the plyometric.
Yeah, that would be so plyometrics, as you may have been introduced to, is eccentric followed by concentric. What I'm trying to emphasize, though, it's not the full range of motion. Plyometrics isn't all of this followed by all of that. It's a repetition, right? Specifically, the plyometrics is when it comes time to put on the brake one way and then change your direction and put on the gas the other. That's when your muscles have to be greater than the weight that it's trying to influence.
We have another question.
Yes.
I was not confused about the super so I'm good extension.
Yeah, no problem.
So like, because I don't know. Yes. Because I can hit the ones and they're not enough for like everything.
Correct. So the question isn't up here. We got that part. The question is down here. Okay. So let's pretend. Let's do. Do you mind doing something? Yeah. Stand. I'm not from the camera, but stand up. Okay. So let's say we were gonna do our example from Wednesday, and we're gonna clap our hands. Okay. But remember, before we decided not to, right? So something has to slow down our horizontal adduction, and we could either clap or not clap. Something has to slow us down. When we clap, we don't need our muscles to slow us down because literally my right hand slowed my left and my left hand slowed my right. But when I didn't clap, I needed muscles to slow me down. Okay, you can sit there. I'm sorry. I know that's uncomfortable. It's very similar here. The axe would be one hand and the block would be the other hand, and they would fight with each other. So you didn't need muscles to. If he would have decided to not hit it, right, to try to slow, then I would need flexors eccentrically to put on the brake. But the fact that he's actually trying to have as fast of extension as possible, so we need gas. And the brake is actually going to be the collision. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? If I collide my hands, I didn't need muscle to slow me down. But if I choose not to, I would have to have muscles to slow me down. Another example of this is when we did the jumping jacks, right? We made sure to say, hey, no collision here, no collision there. Because then I wouldn't need muscles to slow me down. I would literally have my right hand cancel out my left and my left hand cancel out my right. And I would have my thighs cancel out my adduction. But if I choose not to do that, then I have to have muscles braking to slow down my motion. All right, let's do another one. Let's do a kicking one. We're going to analyze hip. I have a different view. I just wanted to see it and show y'all practically. And then we'll go to a different view. Very cool. So let's do phases. When his leg goes back, it's like, again, it's like stretching the catapult or a slingshot. You want to stretch short. Does anybody ever stretch shortening cycle? I want to stretch the rubber band and take all that stored elastic and transfer it into that. So the phases we want to look at is when he brings his leg back. Obviously, he's going to have hip extension. He's going to speed up the hip extension. But I wanted to look specifically at slowing down his hip extension, changing direction to speed up the flexion. But what's different about this one than what's different about this one than with the axe is that you don't have anything colliding to slow you down. You're going to have to slow down that super fast hip flexion. Okay. So we're going to watch this a few times. I'm going to turn down the light just so that you have a better view of it if you rewatch the video. And so I specifically want to look at these three phases: slowing down the extension, speeding up the flexion, and then slowing down the flexion. Who did it and how? I have the late onset muscle soreness just watching these guys. Does everybody understand the assignment? Slowing down the extension, Who did it how? Speeding up the flexion. Who did it how? And then slowing down the flexion. Who did it when? And remember that when you're kicking, like you're trying to make your foot move fast. So there's no waiting for gravity to do it by itself. Right? You gotta make it happen. I got slowing down the hip extension. Who do I need to turn on? Hip flexors. Absolutely. And how? So it's like clue, kinesiology clue. Who did it and how? How can the hip flexors slow down hip extension? Eccentrics. Absolutely. Through eccentrics. That makes sense? Those same muscles get to stay on, change that hip's direction, and transition from slowing down the extension to speeding up the flexion. Guys, think of it like this. In physics, y'all learned about energy, and you have you have like potential energy and kinetic energy, right? There's elastic properties of muscles, tendons and fascia and endomysium, perimysium. Those are inert rubber band-like traits of muscle that help pull. And so what's happening is when those muscles turn on to slow down motion, they're being stretched and they're storing up all this elastic potential energy. And then they get to cash that in and trade it off into kinetic energy when they come back to their direction of pull. Okay. I'm not telling you this that I'm going to ask that on the test. I'm telling you that to help try to make this make sense. Okay. So the same muscles that slow down the extension through eccentrics are going to stay on to speed up the flexion through concentrics. Now, those same muscles can't push you to a stop when it comes time to slowing down the hip flexion. So which muscles they're going to turn off? Let's see if I can stop it in the right spot. So the hip flexors, that wasn't perfect. So if the ball is left, has anybody ever seen in ball, whether it's hitting the ball and you're like, stay fair, or you shoot a shot and you start drifting. You ever seen people like try to influence the ball? Like once it leaves your hand, like unless you're a Jedi, I guess you do that. But once it leaves your hand, you're done influencing it. So once the ball leaves his foot, he can't make the ball go further by like it's time to put on the brakes. The hip flexors can't break the hip flexion. So these guys are going to turn off, and I'm going to turn on the hip extensors. And they're going to slow down the flexion eccentrically. And this is, I think, one of the parts of this lecture that I'm trying to emphasize, just practically. The muscles that are more likely to get strained, pulled, is happening here. You can even imagine that. You go to kick something, you're not going to be like, oh, you're going to be like, you're going to pull something in the back. Because it takes a lot of force to put on the brakes in a small amount of time for something moving that fast. And like I said last class, you don't go to the shop, you don't take your car to the shop to have your gas pedal fixed. It's the brake pads, it's the braking. He had a full range of motion to speed up the hip, but he's only got a few degrees to slow it down. Does that make sense? So all of that energy has to be done in a small amount of time. That means a lot of force. Does it make sense that the hip extensors are going to have to slow down the hip flexion? They're eccentrics. All right, let's do this. Let's watch Granny, it's a nail. Yeah, let's do elbow stuff. He just dominated. Okay, Granny. Let's settle up. Oh, y'all can't see anything. Sorry. Help me figure out some phases here. Let's watch it together. Figure out some phases. Did I say that right? I was trying to teach you some stuff. I know. We analyze motion joint by joint. We analyze muscles joint by joint. Her shoulder stayed relatively still. Yeah, she was kind of using her body, but she was using elbow stuff. So let's have an elbow conversation. Phases. Speed up elbow flexion. Slow down elbow flexion. Speed up elbow extension. Slow down elbow extension. One of those is not meant to be done by muscles primarily, because again, she's going to have the collision of the hammer with the nail. One of those. So 4 phases. Speeding up the flexion, who did it, how? Slowing down the flexion, who did it, how? Speeding up the extension, who did it, how? And then slowing down the extension, the collision of the nail and the hammer. Cool? All right, it'll take a couple minutes. Also, in those phases, try to identify where specifically the plyometric sequence of an agonistic group took place by using the verbiage that we use in class. Feel free, I'm just talking to the camera. Feel free to rewind and rewatch this as many times as you need to help you answer the questions. Go, because I want to do a few more. I know it's a catch-22 with having enough time to make sure you answer. But if I gave you 50 minutes for one question, we wouldn't be able to do a lot of questions. So it's tough for me sometimes to know when the optimal amount of time is. Speeding up her elbow flexion. What was my agonist? Flexors. Yeah. Who are those muscles? I'm going to teach them to you. But it's important for you to understand the concept that I need flexion pullers to make that flexion speed up, because there's nothing trying to make her speed up. I have to make it happen or it's not going to happen. That makes sense? Did the same muscles that sped up her flexion, are they even able to slow down her flexion? No, those muscles have to turn off. She could let gravity do it, but that wouldn't create as much energy to hit the nail on the head than if her muscles help gravity. Does that make sense? So she's going to turn her flexors off and then turn on her extensors to slow down the flexion, change the direction, and speed up the extension. Make sense? Slowing down the flexion eccentrically, changing my direction, speeding up the extension concentrically. There's your plyometric sequence. Her extension gets to be stopped because of the collision of the nail and the hammer. If she didn't collide, like let's say, here's a first of all, any questions about this? Flexors concentric sped me up. Extensors eccentric slowed me down. Extensors concentric sped me up. The collision of the hammer and the nail slowed me down. So I didn't need my muscles. What if at the last second she decided not to hit the hammer? So in other words, let's say she hit it and then she went to hit it again and she decided not to. So she wanted to brake before impact. Does that make sense? The question I'm asking. She decides to not hit it. And maybe she felt embarrassed for the other guy. She wanted him to catch up. Who would have to turn on and how would they have to work? You see the game we're playing here? Who did it? How? Who needs to turn on? How do they need to work? Flexors, eccentric. Guys, that's so important. And it's something that no one can take away from you. Understanding how these things work are much more important than memorizing a bunch of geography. You're going to have time to memorize a bunch of geography. But being able to use that, that's like I could be put in a kitchen and memorize every ingredient, where it's from, what it does. That doesn't mean I can cook. Doesn't mean I know how to use them. So that's what this class is about, is trying to get you to be in the kitchen and work and know how to use the ingredients. The easy part is memorizing a bunch of geography. The easy part is going to be pronator teres, pronator quadratus, flexor carpi ulnaris, extensor carpi ulnaris, just geography. What do they do? How do they pull? How would they work? How would I work them eccentrically? How would I work them concentrically? How would I work them isometrically? That's going to be your kitchen. That's where you're going to be a chef. You're going to be an artist in your kitchen. So we got to learn how these things work. All right, let's do this last one. Or it may not be the last, but it's important. I was trying to find a proprioceptive, but I guess I got to go to the old shaper. Has anybody ever seen shape? Well, you guys have heard of blades, right? They're used in clinics. They're proprioceptive. They're big long blades, and you do proprioception stuff with it. Has anybody ever seen that before? So this is just another one of those. Let me see if I can find the blade. Today I was trying to find videos instead of pictures.
Blades downwards. Now, oscillator blade will maintain your scapula and spinal posture. Take the blade out to the side and move it.
Okay, perfect. So what's happening is, we can't see the screen. Let's see the screen. Onto Frederick. And then I'm going to explain what's happening so that way make sure we can play around with this. So what she's doing is she's having oscillations, small movements at the shoulder. Specifically for this one.
Maintain the neutral spine and gently squeeze your shoulder.
For this one, she's oscillating between little micro internal and external rotations. Does that make sense? And the resistance, even though gravity is not going up and down, the resistance is the momentum. When you're doing this with the elastic blade, when she does this, the two ends are going to curve. And so your resistance is the momentum that's being created with that blade, with that rehab device. Does that make sense? So in other words, your external rotation momentum has to be slowed down by your certain muscles, and then the momentum you create for the other muscles. So it's constant oscillations. So I'm going to give you the phases. If it's constant oscillations of internal and external rotation, and there's nothing trying to internally and externally rotate me, I'm going to have to use internal and external rotators to speed up and slow down those little motions. So we've done big things. Now we're doing small things that we may not be able to see, but we have to understand must be there. How would she speed up the external rotation? Don't answer it, think about it. And then what speeds up must slow down. She has to slow down the external rotation. Then she has to speed up the internal rotation. And she's got to slow down the internal rotation, speed up the external rotation, slow down the external rotation. Does that make sense? Sorry. So I'm teaching you how it's no different than these bigger examples, just it's happening quicker because the range of motion is small. But she's going to have constant speeding up and slowing down of internal and external rotation. And I'm asking you to identify the agonist and the contraction that would be working to do those changes.
Now oscillate the blade while maintaining your scapular and spinal posture.
And that accent. I've heard her accent. Must be from.
Shoulder blades downwards. Now oscillate the blade while maintaining your scapular and spinal posture.
Must be from Europe. Say that with Delvin, our rivals.
Take the blade out.
It's so funny, like growing up, they're like, Delcom ERAF are rivals. And I'm like, half of the people I know from Delcom married someone from ERAF. It couldn't be that much of a rival. Including my brother. All right. Speeding up the internal rotation has to be internal rotators through concentric contraction. The same muscles that sped me up can't push me to a stop. So immediately, this is what these exercises are for. It's meant to have quick oscillations of agonists and antagonists. So as soon as my internal rotators speed up my internal rotation, they're going to turn off. I'm going to flip the light switch in my external rotators, who are going to slow down my internal, speed up my external, plyometric sequence. And then as soon as they speed up my external, I'm going to turn them off and turn on my internal rotators to slow down my external and speed up. That's how these things work. So anytime you've ever seen these kind of proprioceptive, sometimes people will do this with the blades and they'll do this with the blades, and there's other little proprioceptive machines. Those little oscillations are just rapid plyometric sequence of antagonistic muscles. Putting on brakes, turning on gas, putting on brakes, turn on gas. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Does that make sense? Grace, can you think of any other, I think I've used this one, but think if there's any other examples you've heard me use. I've used this one on a test in the past. Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, that looks horrifying. Yeah, let's do sprinting, because stepping on a bug is kind of neat. Oh, this is YouTube. I think I've used this picture right here. All right, guys, I'm going to ask, instead of doing, we're going to practice specific questions. So I'm going to ask a specific question. So kids write, can't see. John Seaton trying to teach. Can't see nothing. Do we agree that his right shoulder is extended relative to anatomical? We're good? Okay. And do we agree that gravity technically would be trying to flex him? But if he's sprinting, you should be able to use kind of logical elimination. As one of my former students made me a T-shirt because I said it in class one time, a long time ago. Logical elimination. Well, gravity's trying to flex me, but if I just let gravity do it by itself, it's not going to go very, very, very fast. Gravity is trying to flex me, but hey, gravity, what can you do on your own? I'm not going to sprint as fast as I can if I just let gravity flex me. I definitely don't want to use extensors to allow the flexion, because through eccentrics, that's going to happen slower than gravity. I'd rather just do gravity. So this logical elimination might be able to help you see who you need and why you need it. Because that flexion that he's going to have if I press play has to happen faster than gravity. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's do a full cycle. Speeding up right shoulder flexion. What speeds up must slow down. Then he's got to slow down the flexion. Then he's got to speed up the extension. Then he's got to slow down the extension. Let's do a full cycle of who did it and how. And let's also try to practice where are my plyometric sequences of those agonists at different spots, okay? Good suggestion, Grace. All right, I'm going to turn the lights on in 1, 2, 3. If you want to praise for it, what? I'm going to slowly transition. That's too much light. So let's pretend he is at the end of his range of motion here. So our first phase is going to be speeding up right shoulder flexion. That's going to be our first thing. So let's speed up the flexion, slow down the flexion, speed up the extension, and then slow down the extension, and we're going to be right back where we start. Remember, one of the positives about looking at muscles based on our pull, it's like translating a language so that it makes sense. So motion is motion, nothing to translate. But if we can make muscles have a similar language than motion, it makes a lot more sense on who you need because of why you need it, because muscles influence motion. So that's why we're emphasizing muscles as a group, pulling in specific directions of motion, because it helps us to see better agonist and contraction. And then once we get the hang of that, then we'll learn our geography. Hi, Mom. She watches my videos. Let's see. It's 8:18. I'll start answering it at 8:19. I try to give you as much time as you can. Heating up the right shoulder flexion. Right shoulder flexors, concentric contraction is going to help me speed it up faster than gravity can offer by itself, right? Those same muscles that sped me up can't put on the brakes. I got to turn them off and turn on my right shoulder extensors to slow down my flexion eccentrically. Those muscles get to stay on to slow down my flexion, change my momentum, and speed up my extension concentrically. My plyometric sequence of my extensors are going to happen when my elbow is in front of my body. The extensors are going to speed up my extension concentrically. Those same muscles can't put on the brake. So I'm going to use my flexors to slow down my extension eccentrically, and that brings me right back to where I started. So my plyometric sequence of my flexors are going to be when my elbow is back here, because the flexors have to slow down the extension, speed up my flexion. The extensor's plyometric sequence is going to be when the elbow is up here, slowing down the flexion and speeding up the extension. Make sense? Cool. All right, guys, y'all have a safe weekend.